Today I'm sharing my top 40 best high-end Christmas home decor, DIYs, decorating ideas, holiday design tips, thrift flips, and so much more. So let's jump right in with our first DIY. On my island, I created a bottle brush tree forest. I rounded up several varieties of bottle brush trees from a few different stores. I purchased some at Home Goods, I got a few at Five Below, I picked up some at Target, and the green bottle brush trees are from the Dollar Tree. I'm going to add several of my bottle brush trees inside of some jars. I have a variety of jars from small, medium to large. So inside of each of my jars, I put in some Epsom salt. This is a cheap way to create some snow. I got a huge bag at Target for $4.99. I poured the Epsom salt into the base of each of my jars. Not only is this a great way to get some mock snow, but it also holds your pieces in place. It gives them some stability so they will stand upright. Inside of this large jar, I'm going to add, of course, the trees, but I also found this antique Santa at a thrift store. He's from 1986 and he only cost $4.99. Came in a box, pristine condition, a treasure, I tell you. He looks perfect in there and fits so nicely. And then I also added some of the bottle brush trees into my other jars. The trees that I did get were pretty monochromatic in the whites, the creams, and the golds, and then the Dollar Trees were my pop of color. Those were the green. So I really like the monotone look that each of these trees bring to this space. Now, I took my jars when I was finished and I placed them on top of a vinyl runner. This is great for a kitchen because, again, if it gets spilled on, you can just wipe it off. And then I placed a sled on top of the runner. I purchased this at Michael's 2 years ago. I placed my large jar on top of the sleigh, and then I added a few more bottle brush trees, and then I placed a Joy Noel sign. Again, this is from Michael's. I put that in the front. To the side, I placed my medium and my small jar with the bottle brush trees, and then I had two leftover trees, and I placed those at the base on top of some marble coasters. The final addition that I'm making to my jars is to add a ribbon. I simply tied this ribbon around the top of the jars and left some long tails. This is a super easy way that takes no skill to add a bit of drama. And that's it for this centerpiece. Super easy. I think it looks fantastic. It is definitely the focal point of this island, and everything on it is washable, so it's perfect for a kitchen. Underneath my cabinets and on either side of my stovetop, I created some small displays. I first started off by using a marble cutting tray as the base. I added 3 bottle brush trees that coordinated with my centerpiece. And then to beautify the space, I'm going to add some small flower arrangements. This is a great way to bring in a natural feeling into your decor because it's got these beautiful botanicals. So I got a variety of flowers. I purchased a few of them from Michael's. Some are from the Dollar Tree. And then I also got a bowl. This is just a kitchen bowl. I have 2 matching ones. I'm not even using a vase because I wanted it to be able to be, again, cleaned easily. So just a plain kitchen bowl is going to work perfectly, and it's white, so it's great. It goes along with my color scheme. And as you guys know, I love to use the tape grid method. So I'm going to get some Scotch tape and I'm going to run a few lines that span the distance of the top of the bowl to create a grid. Then I took my flowers, I bent the stems, and I nestled those flowers right in between the tape grids on my bowl. I added several pretty white flowers. I added some poinsettias. I also added some gold leaves that coordinate with my other greenery in the room. And finally, I added some stems of gold berries. These are the perfect size arrangement for my kitchen. They're small enough that I can press them back against the backsplash and it won't encroach too much on the counter space. I wanted to be able to put something on my backsplash to really highlight the pot filler because it is the focal point in this space. So I thought if I put a wreath to the back of the pot filler, it would be a great way to highlight this area. I have a wreath form that's pretty sparse. I've had it for a while and it definitely needed some beefing up. So I took some leftover garland from last week and I cut some of those pieces off. I took those segments and I weaved them into my wreath. I don't need any additional floral wire because all I have to do is twist those pine branches together and they will stay in place. To wrap around my wreath, I got 2 different ribbons. The first one is from Target, is a white ribbon with a gold border. And the second one is a sparkly ribbon that I purchased at Michael's. I took the ends of these ribbons and I placed them together. Then I got a segment of floral wire, wrapped it around the end of the ribbons to secure together, and then I twisted the wire around the wreath form to secure the ribbon to the wreath. Then I simply took these ribbons and I wrapped them around the wreath form. Every time I made a full circle around the wreath, I got one of the branches and I wrapped it around the ribbons so they would stay in place. Again, I'm going to coordinate my wreath with all of the other elements in the room, and so I'm going to continue to use these gold leaves. So I took the leaves and I pressed them into the form and weaved them underneath the ribbons. I have this beautiful Merry Christmas ribbon that I used on my topiary, so again, I'm going to use it in my wreath. I pinched the center of the ribbon together in the center, so Merry was on one side and Christmas was on the other. Then I got a small piece of the thin ribbon, tied it around the center, and then tied it to my form. Next, I'm going to add some poinsettia stems. The good thing about this is that the poinsettia stems were wired, so it's easy to twist them around the wreath. I have a variety of ornaments that I'm going to be adding to the wreath. I have everything from glass ornaments to the coordinating cream and satin ornaments that I used on my orchid flower arrangement, and then I have some filler ornaments which are in a variety of sheens and finishes in gold. I'm going to add those to my wreath at various places to fill in any vacant spaces, and then the final touch is to add a few stems of gold berries. And that's it for the wreath. I think it's elegant and beautiful and will be a great addition back here. So you may be wondering, how am I going to hang that on a backsplash? Well, I don't know about you, but command hooks during the holidays are one of my best friends because just put them up, use them for the season, and then take them down. So that's what we're going to be using to hang our wreath. I put my wreath around the pot filler first, and then I moved it in place to where I knew I wanted it to be. I added the command hook to the tile and then placed my wreath on the hook. This wreath is a great way to add a focal point to the backsplash. It draws your eye past the centerpiece on the island and straight to the backsplash. I love having glass fronted cabinets. It's a beautiful way to display your dishware. I'm going to be swapping out a few pieces for some holiday pieces. I purchased a beautiful, almost like it's a plate and a bowl at the same time. I got this at Home Goods and it was only $7.99. I also have a very special keepsake. It's this plate right here, and I got it from my great-grandfather. So having it in a cabinet is a great way to display it, and it's also a great way to keep it safe. And then I also purchased a coordinating bowl plate piece that I got at Ross, and it has some beautiful gold snowflakes on it. I placed each of these pieces on a frame easel to hold them upright. Now at the top of my cabinets, I wanted to put some plates. I needed some small plates. I could not find any, but what I could find was some paper plates at Target. These Merry and Bright plates are perfect for this space. And guess what? You would never know they are paper because they're up so high. And The gold just is so reflective that it looks like a regular plate. If you want to swap out your plates for decorative seasonal plates, but you're on a tight budget, using plastic or paper plates is a great way to do it. You can find some beautiful plastic and paper plates that will be perfect for displaying. The final addition to my cabinets are these Shannon crystal candlesticks. What I did was I just flipped them over, and to me, they look like snowflakes. I'm going to add these crystal snowflakes to the top of a stack of plates. By doing this, I was able to save money by not purchasing anything new. I just took something that I already had and reused it in a different way. Lastly, I'm going to add a mirrored tray to my cooktop. To the center of the tray, I'm adding a candle. I love decorating with candles. I love the glow and the ambiance that it brings. So a candle is a definite must in my kitchen. And then I took a beaded garland and I wrapped it around the base of the candle. My final tip is that if you notice, most of my decor is on top of trays. So that way, if I really needed to use the full countertop, I can easily pick up that decor piece and move it over to a table and then move it back. My kitchen is all set and decorated for the holidays. I love the way that everything came together. I have some great focal points that are the right size. I still have counter space. And all of my pieces are user-friendly, meaning I can wipe them all off if they do get spilled on, and everything's gonna be okay. I don't have a flocked tree, and I'm finding it really hard to commit to flocking it because once it's done, it's permanent. And so I haven't done it in the past, but I really love the look of a flocked tree. So what we're gonna do today is we are going to create some flocked pieces that we can add into a tree. I found some garland at Walmart, and then I also got this Santa snow for $2 at the Dollar General. I got a couple of cans of this, and what I did was I took my garland outside and I sprayed it in this Santa snow. I sprayed a pretty thorough coat, and dependent on how thick you put the snow on determines how long you'll need to wait for it to dry. Mine took quite a long time because I put a decent amount on it, close to 2 hours. Once it was dry, I flipped it over and I sprayed the other side, and then I let it dry overnight. Now that our garlands are flocked, we're going to bring out these teardrop swags. I purchased 2 of these at Bell's, and they were $16.99 a piece. The first thing I did was I laid out all of my additional decorations, then I fluffed up all of the branches. I don't know about you, but I feel like 50% of Christmas decorating is simply fluffing up branches, right? It's so time consuming, but it looks so great after you're done. So once all my branches were fluffed up, I took my flocked garland and some wire cutters. I cut off between a 6 and 10 inch long segment. Then I took these pieces and intertwined them. I cut several segments from the large garland and interspersed them with the green pine branches, all throughout these 2 teardrop swags. Check out this swag now. What a difference. A little bit of flocking mixed in with the original pine branches gives these swags a wintry feel, and I didn't have to commit to flocking the whole thing. Next, I'm going to add some gold leaves. I had these leaves in my floral stash already. I didn't need any more green in my greenery, so we're going to paint these leaves gold. I took them outside, placed them on some cardboard, and I began spraying them in a gold metallic Rustoleum spray paint. I sprayed a thorough coat over the top of the leaves, making sure that I got all of the greenery covered in the paint. Then I let the first coat dry for 30 minutes. When the 30 minutes was up, I flipped the leaves over and I sprayed the back side, again making sure that each part of the leaf was completely covered in the paint, and then I let them dry for 1 hour. I tucked these gold leaves into the pine branches throughout the swag. This touch of gold brings a luxurious feel And also the metallic sheen is a great contrast against the more matted mute colors of the pine branches. It's also going to tie in the other gold embellishments like these gold berries. I took several short stems of these gold berries and interspersed these throughout the swags. Next, I'm going to add in some beautiful ornaments. To tie all of these ornaments together, I'm now going to add a few to my swags. At this point, I needed to hang my swags on my lantern so I could wrap the ribbon around it, and it's just easier to do it this way. So as you can see, I added some ribbon. I love this Merry Christmas ribbon. I added more ornaments, poinsettias, and at the top I created a large bow with some white ribbon and gold and white sparkly ribbon. If you find a piece at the store and you think, hey, that's pretty good, bring it home and add some more elements to it. This will make it feel custom. By doing this, you can coordinate it to fit in with your existing holiday decorations. Coordination is key when you're trying to create a cohesive space. Now, we're going to be making a topiary tree out of a garland. You don't always have to have a tree. Sometimes you can just use a garland and wrap it around it. So let me show you how I did it. I took my white antiqued urn with some gold embellishments and I added a large gold trellis to the center. Next, I took a pretty plain garland and I wrapped it in some Christmas lights. I cut some segments of floral wire to attach the garland to the trellis. I wrapped the wire around the top of the trellis and around the end of the garland and twisted it together to secure it to the trellis. I wrapped the garland around the trellis, and every time it made a full circle, I got a piece of that floral wire and I wrapped it around the garland and the trellis to make it stay in place. To add some winter white to our Christmas trees, we're going to cut off a few more of those segments of the flocked garland that we created earlier. I cut off a 6 to 8 inch piece and then I added it to the garland on the trellis. Now, the nice thing about these garland pieces is that they're wired, so you don't have to add any additional wire. All you have to do is twist those branches around the garland. I have some really pretty white satin ribbon, and I'm going to use that and wrap it around my tree. So I started at the top and I made a loop with this ribbon, and again, I got a segment of the floral wire, twisted it around the loop, and then twisted it around the garland. I draped the ribbon around the tree and created loops at various places. Next, I took some of this sparkly gold and cream ribbon and I did the same thing. I got a segment of the floral wire, created some loops, and then had it cascade down the tree as well. I took a segment of this Merry Christmas ribbon, and then I took a smaller segment of this thin ribbon. I took the thin ribbon and I wrapped it around the center so you could still see Merry on one side and Christmas on the other, and then tied it to the tree. Like my swags, I added some poinsettias, gold berries, more of those spray painted gold leaves, and additional ornaments. I added my topiary trees to either side of my tabletop, and underneath the topiaries, I have a cotton fuzzy blanket. I folded this blanket into thirds to create a runner, which has a perfect wintry feel. It's going to be a great base to put all of my other pieces, and the light, bright color will make everything else pop. In the back, I have 2 glass trees. They are gold and green, and I placed them on top of a small cake stand to give them some height. The focal point is going to be what's important to me, and that is the birth of our Savior. I'm going to divide up my nativity into 3 separate areas. On either side, I took a marble tray and added the larger pieces of my nativity, which were the camels. I topped the camels with a glass cloche and then tied a white ribbon around the glass knob at the top. In the center, I wanted something substantial to put my nativity on, and I didn't have a tray that was large enough. And if you've ever priced out large trays, especially trays that have a mirrored bottom, they can get so expensive. So what I did was I found a wall mirror at Ross, and it was $21.99, and I'm going to repurpose it and use it as a tray. So I put that tray down first. To the center, I added another small cake stand. I added the key figures to the top of this cake stand, and then I covered it in another glass cloche. Surrounding the baby Jesus are all of our supporting characters. We have the wise men, a shepherd, and of course our farm animals. I love the way that this nativity is displayed. It's custom, it's unique. I haven't seen anything like this before. This holiday tabletop decor turned out so much better than I had hoped. I absolutely love the way that it looks. I'm thrilled with the way that each piece turned out, from the embellished teardrop swags to the garland Christmas trees, and then also we have our ornaments. They are custom, and they are definitely one of my favorite pieces about this display. I hope something here inspired you in your Christmas decorating and gave you some ideas to create some unique and special Christmas decor. One of my favorite places to decorate at Christmas time is the mantle. It's that time of year where we can go all out and make this area a major focal point. In the past, I have done several styles of mantelscapes. The first thing that we're gonna need, of course, is a garland. What I like to do with my garlands is I take two of them and I intertwine them together to make them look really full and lush. I also like to add a lot of lights to my garlands. The more lights, the better. So the first thing that I needed to do was add some command hooks. I put one on either side of my mantelscape, and then I also got some floral wire and I wired it around the garland on either end so that I could attach the garland to the command hook. You do not want your garland falling off mid-season, so make sure that you get those garlands securely in place. I draped my garlands, so there was a slight dip in the center and a long billowing end on the right-hand side. I have collected quite a few strands of gold beads over the course of several years, so I'm just using beads that I already have. Now, I did go to Target the other day and I saw that they had some gold beaded garlands there. They were by the Ornaments, so if you are looking for some, I have seen them there. What I did was I took my large beaded gold garland first. I attached it to the pine garland simply by weaving those pine branches around the garland. This is great. You don't have to add any additional wire because the garland is already wired. So I attached it to the garland and then I simply just draped it so it was below the pine garland. I made one dip and then brought it up about 2/3 of the way across the garland, and then made a second dip and brought it up to the top corner. I continued this design with my smaller beaded garlands. I simply mimicked the shape of the previous laid garland. Again, I just used those pine branches to hold the garlands in place. I added several strands of garland to create this drape design. I love that it looks like an elegant layered necklace. Can't you see something like this draped across the neck of an elegant lady? It's just very Gatsby-esque to me, and I just love the way that it looks. Now that my garlands are hung, we have 3 distinct areas where everything was attached. Now, I don't want to look at where things are attached, so we're just gonna hide it. And we're gonna do it with some bows. I created some bows out of some thick white satin ribbon and then also some sparkly gold ribbon. I tied them into a bow and I placed these bows in the areas where the gold beaded garlands were connected to the pine garland. Next, I took one of these white snowflake ornaments and I took a thinner piece of satin ribbon and I threaded it through the ornament, and then I tied it around the bow. Again, I'm leaving long tails all throughout my decor. I love the way the long tails look on the ribbon. It's just so elegant. Next, I took some gold and white poinsettias and I place those above the ribbons. The poinsettias help to draw your eye to these specific areas, and it also helps cover up all the areas where everything is connected. Next, I took some white and gold snowflake ornaments and I scattered those throughout the garland. Then I placed several varieties of ornaments throughout the garland. I have some sparkly ornaments, some shiny, some matte, some glittery ornaments, all kinds. The bigger the variety, the better. In order to enhance the length of this side of the garland, I decided to add some tassels. These beautiful tassels add length to the side. It drapes so beautifully down this garland, and it's an unexpected element. I have found some amazing treasures at my thrift store in the past, but this guy right here is definitely one of the best. I found him at my local thrift store and he was only $6.99. That is an amazing price. I've looked for Santas in the past and they can get so pricey, so I scooped this guy up for $6.99. Is he in perfect condition? No. But we're gonna try our best to bring him back to his former glory. Now, his hands and his face were pretty dirty, so we're just gonna start off by washing him. I got a damp rag and I wiped off his hands really well. There were a few marks that were pretty stubborn that wouldn't come off, so I got out my magic eraser and I rubbed that really firmly over his little hands and the dirt came right up. As I was washing off his face, I did notice that on his nose he had a chip. The paint had been chipped off. So after I washed his face off, I got some craft paint. I mixed a pink and a red together to match the color that was on his cheeks. I painted his nose in this pinkish red color and it looks like it was always supposed to be that way. Santa is, after all, supposed to have a cherry red nose, right? So after I was done with his nose, I got that damp rag and I continued to wipe off his robe. I got all of the dust off and then I got a pair of scissors and I trimmed off any errant threads. I really liked his hat, but I thought we can do better. So we're gonna add a little bit of flair. I got 2 holly leaves and a gold metal snowflake. I hot glued them together and then I hot glued them to the hat. I had another gold metal snowflake and I put some hot glue on that and I hot glued that to the center of his belt. These 2 small additions that we added to Santa give him that extra flair that he needed. What is Santa without an overflowing bag of presents? I got a canvas bag and I stuffed it full of polyfill. Then I got some small gift boxes and I placed those on top so that they would overflow out of the bag. What a great transformation this Santa got. He was pretty tired, like we all are this time of year, but he got a much needed refresh so he could look his best coming down the chimney, delivering presents on Christmas Eve. To add balance and symmetry to my fireplace, I needed another tall element to go with my tall Santa. I have these gorgeous gold mercury glass candlesticks. They're really tall. I purchased these at HomeGoods. And what I'm going to do is add a mercury mirrored star. It's an ornament I purchased these at Michael's. They were $9.99, but of course I went when it was 40% off, so I got them on sale. I cut off the original ribbon that came with the ornament, and then I added a white and gold ribbon. This ribbon will coordinate with the rest of the ribbon that I have in this room. As you know, I have ribbon everywhere this year in my decor. So again, I needed some that was going to coordinate and tie in the other pieces in the room to my mantelscape. So I took that ornament and I added it to my candlestick. I just simply tied it around it and let it drape down. And then I took one of my candlesticks and I placed it on top of this gift wrapped box. It adds variation in height and a little more interest to my display. And just like that, our plain candlesticks are now themed Christmas. Sometimes you don't have to go above and beyond. We already did that with the garland. We went above and beyond that. So to do something a little simpler is best. It's a lot easier. It's still themed Christmas. All I did was take a piece that I already had. I added a holiday element to theme it Christmas. Well, I am just thrilled with the way that this mantelscape turned out. It feels so luxurious and elegant. The color scheme and the similar ribbons and ornaments complement the other holiday decorations I have throughout this open space. I love the additional sparkle that it brings into the room with all of those Christmas lights nestled inside of the garland. I'm excited for Santa to come down the chimney and be greeted by this Christmas scene. We're going to start off by making some topiaries that I'm going to put on the top of a large glass vase. I got a styrofoam ball from Michael's that I covered in pieces of pine garland. I have been using gold beaded garland this entire Christmas season, so it only makes sense that I use it on these to tie everything together. I got this particular gold beaded garland at Target. I took the end of the gold garland, placed a floral pin on the garland, and then pressed them both against the styrofoam ball to hold the beaded garland in place. Then I made a dip and brought it back up and adhered it to the styrofoam ball with another floral pin. Once I got back to the original starting point, I just began to do that same process again. Only this time my dips were a little more shallow so that they would run along the top portion of my first row of garland. Once I was done with the second row, I started on a third. I did it the exact same way, using the floral pins to adhere the garland to the styrofoam ball as I went. Now, I like to cover up the mechanics of things. I don't like to see where things are attached. So I'm going to make some bows to put over the top of where the beaded garland is attached to the styrofoam ball. So I made a large white bow and I got a floral pin, placed it in the center, and then pressed it into the styrofoam ball. I did not want to leave the center of the bows plain, so what I did was I got a few frosted leaves, a gold stem of berries, another bow that I created with a white and gold polka dot ribbon. I'm going to put all those together and then get a floral pin and place it in the center of the bow to create a beautiful design element that adds a unique detail to the center of the bow. I did two different styles of bows. I did the large white one, and then I did this second one, which is a little bit smaller. I didn't want to have giant bows everywhere, so I did one that was just a little bit smaller. I made this bow with a white and gold ribbon, and in the center I did some more of those frosted leaves, and then this time I chose to use some ornaments. I just gathered a bunch of ornaments and placed it underneath the frosted leaves and placed it in the center of the bow. Then I placed a few hanging crystals from the topiary ball. I got some fishing line and I threaded it through the crystal and pressed the top of the fishing line into this topiary ball. And then a final touch was to add a few gold berries at the top. These vases are quite large and I needed to fill the center with something. So I got some gorgeous crystal snowflake ornaments from HomeGoods. I threaded a white ribbon through the ornament and then attached it to the bottom of the styrofoam ball so it could hang in the center of the vase. It's an elegant touch and it has a beautiful sparkle, but most importantly, it fills the empty space in the space with a unique creative piece. And then at the bottom of the vases, I filled it with that Epsom salt snow. I've used that Epsom salt pretty much everywhere in all of my jars, so I thought it was only fitting that I put it in these vases as well. Now that my topiaries are all finished, I placed them on a marble tray, and then I layered 2 wreaths together. I put a pine wreath on the bottom and a gold bottle brush wreath over the top. Adding layers like this combine textures and colors, which make this piece very custom. Because I have my 2 tall topiaries on either end of the table, I decided to do a shorter piece in the center. Now I have one reindeer. He is the quintessential definition of a stag. He has yet to find his mate. So I haven't really known what to do with him until I saw my sleigh, and I thought he can pull the sleigh by himself. So the first thing I did was I took this sleigh and I put a bag inside, and if those boxes look familiar, it's because we created those last week on my Cricut Maker, and I loved them so much that I decided to make a whole lot more in a variety of different sizes. I placed a few in the bag and they have even spilled out onto the ground. To create the reindeer harness, I am again using that gold beaded garland. I took some floral wire and I wired it around one of the gold beads and attached it to the sleigh, and then brought it up and attached it to the ribbon that I have around his neck, and then I repeated the process on the other side. And just like that, I have a solution for my solo reindeer. So if you don't have a set, you can always have one reindeer pull a sleigh. He's strong enough, he can do it. The other things that I have on my centerpiece are some bottle brush trees, and then I have a few glass trees as well. On either side of my riser, I put some frosted leaves, and then I put a few reindeer picks to tie in with my reindeer theme, and then I put a few pine cones in the center. This centerpiece is so beautiful. It's elegant and rustic at the same time. I've used elements that are unique to this room, but also that tie in with the decor in the rest of the house. Last year, I created this Christmas countdown clock, and it immediately became one of my all-time favorite pieces for Christmas. My little ones love moving the hand every morning. It's just a treasure. Another one of those repeating elements that I have used in my Christmas decorations this year are asymmetrical garland designs. So of course it would only make sense that I did it on this as well. I first placed a pine garland that had some twinkle lights inside, and then I got my gold beaded garland. I started at the far corner. I attached the end of the gold garland to the pine garland by simply taking a pine branch and wrapping it around the gold beaded garland. I made a dip and went about 2/3 of the way across the top. I attached it to the pine garland and then made another dip and attached it to the far left corner by wrapping another pine branch around it. Then I went back the other way and made a shallower dip to go above the first dip. I attached everything together by simply using the pine branches that were on the pine garland. To cover up the places where everything is attached, I'm again going to be using some bows. I created some bows and I attached them to the garland with the pine branches right where the gold beaded garland was attached to the pine garland. Then I added some poinsettias, gold berries, a variety of ornaments, some crystals hanging from fishing line, and 2 beautiful tassels. I got it at my local thrift store and it was only $3.50, which is a great deal. One thing that I did not like about this Christmas tree was that it had a burlap base and it was not the sturdiest tree. It kept toppling over. So to remedy both of these problems, I got this white container and I placed an upturned votive candle holder into the bottom to add some height. Then I placed my thrifted tree inside of the container and ta-da, a thrifted makeover. Now, I know it's not the most elaborate thrifted makeover that I've ever done, but guess what? It's Christmas time and this tree was pretty good to begin with, so it didn't need a whole lot of tweaking. So once it was in my container, I decorated it with some beautiful ornaments, some hanging crystals, a few gold berries, and then for my tree topper, I'm using another one of those crystal snowflakes, the same ones that I used inside of my vase. I attached it to the top, and this beautiful tree is complete. To cover up the base of the stand and also to kind of hide the cords, what I did was I just got some empty boxes and I wrapped them in some wrapping paper and tied some gold bows around it. I love the way that these presents look down here. They give additional height to the tree, they cover up the ground, and it gives this space an additional holiday touch. Now it's time to move on to the back wall, which is where I have my nativities set up. For me and my family, the true meaning of Christmas is the birth of Christ, and so I wanted to make sure that I had a beautiful display of all of my nativities. My collection keeps growing, which is a great thing, but I needed to spread it out a little bit more this year, and so placing it on top of this buffet area is perfect. What I did was in the center, I got a lantern and I placed Mary, Joseph, and the baby Jesus inside of this lantern. And then I spaced out the remaining characters around this lantern. I also added several other of my nativities that I've collected over the course of several years and in my travels. On either side, I also have a framed picture of Mary and the baby Jesus, as well as a very poignant scripture. To the top of my buffet, I added some twinkle lights. And to soften the lights just a bit, I added some polyfill to go over the top of the lights. At night, it just looks heavenly. It looks like everything's floating and it adds a soft ambient light to highlight these nativities. I wanted to do something fun and unique with these candle sconces that I have on either side of my oil painting. And if you remember, a few weeks back, I decided to put some teardrop swags underneath some lantern sconces in my family room. And so I didn't want to mimic that same look, but I wanted to do something fun and exciting. So I thought that putting a wreath behind this sconce would be a great alternative. I simply took a pine wreath, wrapped a gold and white sparkly ribbon around it, and then placed them behind the candle sconce. I attached them to the top of the sconce by simply wrapping one of those pine branches around the metal portion of the sconce. To decorate my pine wreath, I'm going to be using a variety of ornaments, a few botanicals, and then to tie in my teardrop swags with these wreaths, I'm going to add that same Merry Christmas ribbon to the top. I absolutely love the way that this dining room looks. Not only did it complete my Christmas decorating, but it is a show-stopping space. I used the same elements here as I did in the rest of the home, but I added some unique elements so this space has its own personality. We are going to start off at the tippity top of this mirror, and we're going to make a garland and drape it over the top. I began by placing some command hooks above the mirror, one on either corner of the mirror. Next, I got a pine garland and I weaved a string of Christmas lights through the garland. And then I got some floral wire and I cut some segments off and I put the floral wire at the end of one part of the garland and about a third of the way from one of the ends. I wrapped that wire around the garland and then I hung it on the command hooks. Now, do you remember the fireplace mantle we did not too long ago? I did it in an asymmetrical style. I used gold beaded garland to accentuate the shape. I loved it so much, I wanted to mimic that on my mirror. Not only do I love the shape, but recreating that design ties the two spaces together. So I took the end of the gold beaded garland and I wrapped a pine branch around the end. I made a small dip in the garland and then attached it back up to the pine garland about 2/3 of the way across the top garland. I made a second dip and attached it to the top corner. I created several rows of beaded garland dips to create a luxurious, sparkly design. Just like in my fireplace garland, I'm going to be creating some bows to add in the places that everything is connected, because we don't want to see where things are connected, so we can hide them through placing these bows over the top. So I created these bows and I placed them right where the gold beaded garland connects to the pine garland. Then I added a variety of poinsettias, some gold berries, gold and crystal gems, and hung them by the fishing lines so they look like they're floating. And then, of course, a variety of ornaments. I created these paper ornaments on my Cricut Maker. I'm using a cardstock. Cricut has a big variety of cardstock. I chose a white cardstock to make my ornaments out of. I simply peeled back the cardstock from the ornament, and then I gently peeled the ornaments off the mat. I did this with both of my ornament designs. I love how these two designs complement each other and resemble lace. Once I had my ornaments peeled off, all I had to do was get an ornament hook, put it through the hole at the top of the paper ornament, and hang it on my garland and on my mini tree. These ornaments are a perfect addition because they bring in white, which I am decorating in a winter white, so it brings in that white color, and it just finishes off the garland and the tree beautifully. I can't even tell you how much I love this garland. It is so striking. It draws your eye upward and it makes this foyer space feel grand. Next up, let's decorate this foyer table. We're going to start off by making our Christmas tree forest. In my kitchen, I created a centerpiece with apothecary jars and bottle brush Christmas trees. Again, to tie these two pieces together, I'm going to be recreating that look in a similar way on my foyer table. I had some gorgeous apothecary jars in a variety of sizes, and I filled them with some Epsom salt. I love using Epsom salt because it really does look like snow, and I got a giant bag at Target for only $4.99, and I've used it pretty much everywhere, so I've definitely gotten my money out of this Epsom salt. I poured a bit of this Epsom salt into the bottom of each one of my jars, and then I placed a bottle brush tree in the center. In this short round jar, I placed in a mini cupcake stand, and then I put in a snow globe that I created last Christmas. And finally, I added 2 small trees. Like my kitchen jars, these jars are going to get a bow wrapped around the top as well. I created some bows and I left some long tails. The difference between my kitchen jars and my foyer jars, because the foyer's a little more formal, I'm going to add a beautiful, sparkly crystal ornament to each one of my jars. I placed 2 of my jars on top of a marble tray, and the larger one is just right on the table. And then I got 2 small Dollar Tree cloches that I spray painted gold and then put some of that bling wrap around the base. And inside of those, I have another bottle brush tree and some more Epsom salt snow. One of my favorite family treasures are these Christmas lists that my husband and I wrote when we were children. I get them out every year and just love them. So these are my treasures. They are gonna take center stage on this table. I placed my husband's framed Christmas list on top of a gift wrapped box, and I wanted to add some more gift boxes, and I know that Cricut has some awesome options. So I went to my Cricut design space and I created some more boxes there. In my Cricut design space, I hit New Project, I clicked on Images. In the search bar, I typed in Gift Box, and on the operation type, I did Cut Only. Several options came up. I clicked on this one and hit Add to Canvas. I selected my box and went to Size and put in the size that I needed. Once it was sized appropriately, I hit Make It. It sorted it onto my mats, and I am doing it on the mat. I clicked Save, and then I clicked Continue. Now we're going to be selecting our materials. My material wasn't on the main page because I'm using a mixed materials in a gold party foil. So I had to browse all materials, and in the search bar, I typed in party foil, and it came up. I selected it, and then I hit Save. I clicked more on the pressure. To load my material, I clicked the flashing arrow button, and then to begin the cutting process, I hit that flashing play button. It loaded it into my Cricut Maker and began cutting it. Once it was 100% done cutting, I unloaded my material by hitting that flashing arrow button, and now I have the scallop detail for my box. I went directly back to the computer screen and selected my cardstock that was going to be my box, and then I did more on the pressure. I loaded my cardstock into my Cricut Maker by hitting that flashing arrow button, and then hit the flashing play button, which began the cutting process. Once it was 100% done cutting, I unloaded this mat by hitting the flashing arrow button, and then I hit Finish on the computer. I peeled away the excess cardstock from around the box, and then I gently peeled the box off of the mat. I did the same thing with my party foil. I simply removed the excess and then peeled the scallop detail off of the mat. Then I began to fold my box. There are these little cut marks along the edges where you're supposed to fold it, so it was really easy to create. I hot glued the edges of the boxes together. That way they would stay in place. And then I hot glued the scalloped gold foil piece right underneath the lip of the box. Finally, I wrapped a white and gold ribbon around the box. This ribbon will tie these gift boxes in with the jars. These cute little boxes are the perfect addition to this tablescape. They add some fun interest, and they really tie into the whole Christmas list idea, because a gift and a Christmas list go together. On the end of my foyer table, I'm going to be adding a thrifted Christmas tree that I got last year. Again, I'm filling it with the same things that I put on my garland. It's got those gorgeous ornaments. It's got some ribbons, some berries, some poinsettias, and at the top, I have this gorgeous Mercury mirrored glass Christmas star. It adds the sparkle and the sheen that this display needs. It also ties in with all of the crystals, and it reflects those beautiful Christmas lights back into the room. Also, having this tree here adds balance to this wall, because we have this huge garland that only goes on half of the mirror. We have the other straight line right here that's vacant. So by adding a tall piece on this side, it tricks your eye into thinking that everything is cohesive and balanced. The way this entire foyer wall looks with the table and the mirror and the garland and everything is one of my favorite foyer looks that I've ever done. It feels elegant and grand. It sets the tone for what's going to be expected in the rest of the home. And at night, with the sparkly Christmas lights shining, it just looks magical. Having Christmas lights up that high on the wall brings a glow into this space. I've been in a rut where I typically just stick to pine trees and poinsettias in my Christmas decorating. I personally love orchids, and I really wanted to find a way to incorporate those into my Christmas decorations this year. And so I came up with this holiday floral arrangement. I purchased this white geometric container at Ross a couple of years ago, so it's going to be my base. I filled it up with some foam and I topped it off with some moss. These gorgeous orchids were actually given to me by a friend who knows that I love flowers. If you don't have orchid stems, you can purchase them at Michael's. I've purchased them there before and they're pretty affordable. So I took my orchid stems and I poked them into the floral foam. I spaced them out equidistant from each other so the arrangement would be symmetrical. In order to give some stability to the orchid stems because they're super floppy and we want them to be able to stand straight up, I'm going to get some sticks. I'm going to cut off a few branches from a large stick with some wire cutters. I'm using these particular branches because they look Christmassy to me, but in the past I've also used some wooden dowels, so you can use those too. I took these stems and I placed them right next to my orchids. To tether the orchid stem and the branch together, I'm going to be using some really pretty champagne gold ribbon that I purchased at Michael's. I took a segment of the ribbon and I wrapped it around the orchid stem and the branch. Then I tied it into a bow. I did leave some long tails on my ribbons because I thought it looked so pretty. I repeated the process with the remaining 3 orchid stems and 3 branches. Now it's time to give this a Christmas flair. So at the base of my container, I'm going to first add some pine branches. I got this pine branch at Target. I cut some smaller branches off with some wire cutters and then poked the pine stems into the foam. I added several pine stems to the base to cover up the floral foam. Next, I'm going to add a few of these sprigs of goldberries. Again, I purchased these at Michael's. I cut some segments off the larger branch and then I poked them into the floral foam. I spaced them out all around the base of the floral arrangement. I love the way the goldberries add a pop of color and also bring in a metallic element of gold. I'm going to be adding some of these ornaments to the base. I purchased these pearlescent ornaments at Walmart, and I added the ornaments at the base of each of my orchid stem. These ornaments make this feel so luxurious and classy. And the final addition is to add some pine cones in vacant spaces to make the base feel full and lush. So what do you think about this floral arrangement? It's traditional and non-traditional at the same time. It's traditional because it has the elements of the pine cones and the pine branches and the Christmas ornaments and the berries, but it's unique because it has these gorgeous orchid stems. If there is a specific flower that you absolutely love or that you have a lot around your house, just because it's Christmas time doesn't mean that you can't continue to use it. All you need to do to theme it in Christmas is add a few traditional holiday elements. Now that our floral arrangement is complete, we are going to move on and create a garland that's going to frame this mirror. I first purchased a 9-foot garland at Walmart and it was only $2.76. That is a good price. I fluffed up the branches and then I folded the garland in half to make it thicker and fuller. Before we add all of our decorative elements, we're going to hang it on the mirror. So the first element that we're going to add to our garland is a custom ribbon. I purchased some ribbon at Michael's. It's plain, and I wanted to embellish it, so we're gonna do it with a Cricut iron-on detail. At Cricut Design Space, I hit New Project. I clicked on Images. In the search bar, I typed in swirl. I scrolled down because there were a lot of options, and I selected this one right here, and I clicked on it and then put Add to Canvas. Brought it to my design space. I sized it to the size that I needed. Then I hit Duplicate, which made another one. I put it up right against my existing design. And once it was there, I selected all and went down and welded them together to create one. Next, I selected it again and I hit the duplicate button because I wanted to make 6 of these designs. Once I had my 6 designs, I went up and I hit Make It, which sorted it onto my mat. I'm doing without a mat because I'm using a smart vinyl. Then I clicked Continue, and my material is a smart iron-on, and I forgot to hit Mirror. So I went over and I hit Edit, and then I did Mirror because you always want to do Mirror on an iron-on. And now I could hit more on the pressure, and I loaded my material by hitting the flashing arrow button, and then I hit the flashing play button, which began the cutting process. Once it was 100% done cutting, I unloaded my material by hitting the flashing arrow button, and then I went back to my computer and hit Finish. I weeded away the excess vinyl from this beautiful design. I got a pair of scissors and I cut the columns into strips. And then I took my iron decal, I placed it in the center of the ribbon with the protective coating facing up. I heated up my Easy Press to 330 degrees and I set the timer for 30 seconds. I placed the Easy Press over the top of my vinyl and started the countdown by hitting that green C button. Once the timer had run down, I removed the Easy Press from the ribbon, and then I peeled away the plastic covering over the top of the vinyl. Then I repeated the process with the remaining 5 segments. Ribbon can be so expensive, especially if you're getting one with a beautiful detail on it. So by making this ourselves, we saved ourselves some money and we got a custom ribbon. You could also add some Christmas trees or some reindeer or some words like Merry Christmas or Joy. There's so many things that you could do to create a holiday themed ribbon. So at this point, I just took my ribbon and I wrapped it around my garland. We added a beautiful element of sophistication to an otherwise plain ribbon. The next element that we're going to add to our garland is a wood beaded garland. So we're gonna add a garland to a garland. So I purchased this garland at Ross and it was $7.99. What I wanted to change about this garland was the natural color of the beads, and also there were like these little pillowy Christmas trees on there. They were stuffed, they were fabric, I just cut them off. I figured I can give them to my daughter and she will get to color on them and then she can hang them on her tree, so they're not going to waste. Once these little trees were removed, I took my garland outside and I placed it into a box so the garland could hover. I'm going to paint it with some white gloss Rustoleum spray paint. I painted the beads thoroughly in the spray paint. Once it was completely coated in the paint, I let it dry for 30 minutes. Then I twisted the garland so the bare side was facing up, and I painted it again in a thorough coat of the spray paint. Once it was completely coated, I let it dry for 2 hours. I love the way that this white garland looks now. Not only is it going to be perfect for Christmas time, but I will be able to use it for so many holidays and decorating for the rest of the year. So I just simply draped this garland over the top of the existing garland, and I love the natural element that it adds. Next, I'm going to add some snowflake ornaments. I purchased 2 plain plastic ornaments at the Dollar Tree, and we're going to customize these as well. In my Cricut design space, I hit New Project, I clicked on Images. In the search bar, I typed in snowflakes. Several options came up. I selected this snowflake, and then I hit Add to Canvas. It brought it to my design space. I sized it to the size that I needed, and then I hit Duplicate because I wanted 4 snowflakes. At this point, I hit Make It. I'm using the mat, so I hit on the mat, clicked Continue, and then I selected my material, which was a premium vinyl that's glossy. And on the pressure, I selected more. I loaded my material by hitting the flashing arrow button, and then I hit the flashing play button, which began the cutting process. Once it was 100% finished, I unloaded my material by hitting that flashing arrow button, and now I have my beautiful snowflakes. Finally, I hit Finish on the computer. I weeded away the excess vinyl from the snowflakes. Then I took my transfer tape, placed it over the top of the vinyl snowflakes. I pressed them firmly together with my scraper tool, and then I cut the snowflakes into individual pieces. I removed the backing from the vinyl, and then I placed the snowflake in the center of my ornament. I got my scraper tool and I pressed the vinyl firmly to the ornament, and then I gently removed the transfer tape. I repeated this process with all 4 of my snowflakes. The reason I chose this snowflake design was because I had some coordinating glass snowflake ornaments, and I knew that they would be beautiful together. Once I had my ornaments hung, I looked at it and I thought, you know, it could really use some of that champagne gold ribbon that we added to our orchid arrangement. So I added that to the garland. I would suggest that if you're going to add ribbon to it, do it before you add the ornaments, but you know, this was a design inspiration that came after the fact that the ornaments were on, so you just have to make do. But I added the ribbon to the garland, and I think it's a beautiful addition. Isn't this garland a perfect addition to this mirror? It really highlights the shape of the mirror. It's not overwhelming and it doesn't block the mirror. So if you have a piece of art or a mirror that you want to decorate for Christmas, creating a garland and hanging it from the perimeter is a beautiful way to do that. These pieces were so easy to make, and I absolutely love the way that they look. These pieces are a little more unique than I traditionally tend to decorate with, so I'm really excited to incorporate this into my holiday decor. I hope you enjoyed the pieces that we made today, and I hope you got some inspiration. I appreciate you stopping by. Thank you so much for watching.